Tuesday morning. It's like 6:30. Flew into Seattle last night. Have research today. And 2 days of summit with the extensions team. I'm doing this because I'm running and because I didn't go into the office early. Because I promised myself I wouldn't this time.
For only take a stand and take it where you are. Turn around and face it, you're adjacent to the scar.
Oh, my glasses are fogging up. So I'm in Seattle again. This time I'm in Bellevue. Here for 3 days for a summit around extensions and our web store. Excited to meet those people, hear what's going on in that world. So technically today is the first day of the summit, but I have a full day of research with our user experience research team. So sitting through a full day of interviews, taking notes, hopefully learning some insights about some of the stuff we'll be working on next year. But behind me is Lake Washington. I promised myself today to not go into the office early and to run, and so I'm doing that. And it's taking some training and some discipline, which is kind of what I want to talk about today, about kind of like embracing the grind, but not like what you're thinking when you say grind.
Turn around and face it, you're adjacent to the scars. I won't mind you though. We heard that story before. What you think we're taming with the towers and the oak? You keep it in, boy, you're putting it flat on the floor. It's okay. You were young when you were gaming, but you stayed there and you respected when we photograph our scars. Some lonely fable that we took it right from the start. I want it back. I want it back. Won't you tell me how to get it back?
So we're off to do school drop-offs. I am not in Seattle anymore because that trip was crazy. But let's finish that conversation about C.R.A.F.T.
Chicken breast, smelly chicken breast. Dad, are you making another video of how we do our mornings?
Alright, you ready, bud? Say, off to home.
Off to home.
High five. Punk rock. Shaka. Nux. Punk rock. Shaka. Thumbs up. Thumbs down.
Coffee.
So if you've noticed, I'm in a pretty bad habit of starting a vlog or a video on a trip to usually Seattle or San Francisco, get a bunch of footage, and then actually get into work and don't record anything. I did it again. I started this, as you saw, in Seattle, did some research, and then had 2 days of a summit and more research, and literally had no time. Was running and trying not to do vlogging, but here we are again, a week later in Irvine. And I tweeted out, like I said before, about C.R.A.F.T and what that means to people. I've had some introspection, been thinking about it a lot as I've been doing more mentoring and leadership stuff at C.R.A.F.T. And so I'm gonna take today to finish that video and kind of close this loop, because done's better than perfect, right? Also, I'm running again. This is the Newport Costa Mesa Back Bay. It's just a mile from Google Irvine, one of my favorite places to run. Beautiful morning.
Turn around and face it, you're adjacent to the scars. I won't mind you though. We heard that story before. What you think we're taming with the towers and the oak? You keep it in, boy, you're putting it flat on the floor. It's okay. You were young when you were gaming.
Okay, so in the context of C.R.A.F.T, because related to design, it takes a lot of practice. The last, I'd say, year really, but practically the last couple months, been trying to be more diligent and disciplined about running, knowing what it does for mental health and for my energy and for my creative efficiency, really. It really helps, I feel, 10 times better when I do run in the morning, and so I've been trying to force myself to get out in the morning rather than starting work. Outside of that discipline, like that in itself is hard enough of like just showing up and doing the work. But also like for me as a person that's never really been very physical or done lots of sports, it's been a huge learning curve. So for the last year, I've been trying to understand like what a pace means and what proper running shoes is and like how not to hurt yourself. And luckily I have a lot of friends that do run a lot, do marathons, do races, and so have been able to learn from my friends. But honestly, it's weird as an adult, you know, being in my mid-30s, learning a new thing, something as simple as running and exercising. But as I've been slowly running, practicing and showing up and doing the work, I've been realizing how much easier it's been, how much better I've felt. And I only speak about this because as I've been running and as I've been doing this, I've been thinking a lot about how it relates to craft and how practice and time in design develops not only like discipline of showing up and doing the work, but also all of the details of what you learn and what it means to be a designer. Similarly, running isn't just having the right gear or just getting up and running. It's a combination of many details and it's like gaining the context, showing up, and then also learning and maturing in that specific topic. So I think there's a lot of parallels between learning a new thing and what craft means as it relates to design.
Taking where you are. Turn around and face it, you're adjacent to the scars.
So the reason I thought about making this whole video is because this last 6 or 8 months I've been doing a mentorship internally with Google with an engineer that was trying a program inside of Google where you can like intern kind of a thing. It's called Bungees. It allows you as an engineer to try UX with an interest and spend some time with a different team in a different role with the intent of career growth and exploring new things. And so as a lead on Chrome Desktop, I was able to spend some time with an engineer that was on our team and working on our projects as a real designer in UX on Chrome. So it was a great opportunity for me to like exercise that leadership, mentorship things. One thing I learned is that there's a huge context switch outside of like learning design. When you come to design, but from a different point of view, whether that's engineering or project management or research or something entirely different, it's a different point of view as far as how you talk about products and how you talk about solutions and how you approach design in general. It was a real illuminating experience for me and for my manager as we mentored this mentee. And it was a really fulfilling experiment, really. I think we all learned a lot. But one thing that really came out was we kept talking about craft. Me and my manager, Monica, kept saying, you're doing great, you're succeeding in all these different things. One of the things that is hard to replicate and or learn fast is craft. And the more and more we started saying that, I got feedback, and the mentee was saying, like, what is craft? Like, what do you mean by craft? And it was a really hard question because I viscerally know what that means because I've spent time in the craft and had a hard time articulating it. And so for the last couple months, I've been thinking about what does craft really mean, at least to me, and more broadly to our industry. And so I did tweet out, I might have mentioned it earlier in the video, so I tweeted out to ask Design Twitter and whoever follows me, like what craft meant to them as it relates to design. So I want to share some of those things and then kind of give you what it means to me and kind of my breakdown. Okay, so I tweeted out, what does the word craft mean to you? Hashtag UX questions, hashtag design Twitter. This was last week. And honestly got a lot of really interesting replies. I'm just going to go through some of my favorite. One of the first replies was from my friend Rick in Austin. He said, just a hip fire response, but if something was crafted, it sounds like experts took all considerations through many iterations to create a product that surpasses a higher standard than average expectations. I generally agree with that in the sense that if someone has craft, I'd imagine there's a quality and a professionalism to their design or their solutions or their work that is superior to someone that's earlier in the craft. I think it in some levels speaks to seniority. Ben Klein from Utah said, it's the final 10% of execution. Details before something goes into the hands of a consumer rarely happens. ROI is hard to measure on this. It's not enough to move the needle. I've often talked about this as delight in UX. I think this is also a thing. If you have craft and you are a professional practicing craft, usually there's going to be details and nuance that will be skipped or passed on. And it is hard to measure these things, but I think if you are practicing craft and you have been doing things, you are more senior. These are things that you can get in the build or get in the design that might not be prioritized, but might be useful for design. And I think really in the end, the user really benefits from that. And that's kind of advocating for the user and always fighting for what's right for them. Natalie, also from Fun Size in Austin, said, beer. Craft beer is good. But she said, sorry for reacting to the dumb answer. My answer is that I think craft is being something that an artisan makes or creates. I definitely don't think this is in relation to digital things. I would definitely agree with that as well. I immediately think of my barber and my tattoo artist when I think of craft, and it's something that you learn from someone else and spend many hours in to perfect and create your own style and learn. And I think design is very similar to that. Trevor Cleveland, a good buddy from Netflix, now lives in San Diego, said, bettering your skills over time. We never need to stop learning. It's a lifetime of getting better. Once again, similar to Natalie's comment of, just spending time in something and learning it from those around you. This one is good. This is from Frank, still up my sleeve. I don't think we've met Frank. A type of undertaking, such as a trade or hobby, that requires considerable amounts of effort and dedication to hone, yet uniquely isn't possible to master, typically lacks hard and fast rules, independent from a career. I'm really bad at reading out loud. Lacks hard and fast rules and independent from a career, and that it's more of an adjective than a noun. I think this kind of gets to more of style, if I think of it, rather than craft, but I agree that this is something that, and also paralleling what Ben said, like, this is hard to measure. Craft is something that I think is rooted in time and in learning and like doing the discipline, but also I do think there's an unmeasurable and it's the adjective, not the noun. It's this essence or a style or an aesthetic or an approach that is unique. And I think you see this in good branding and products that have a consistent product experience, and you associate that product experience with the brand. You see this in products like Airbnb and Uber and Apple. Obviously, Google has a very consistent product experience across all of their products. And for better or worse, I think there's craft in that. And whether you're learning that from your colleagues and the people on the team, or whether you're learning that in a broader discipline, I think there's this essence of time and grinding and work. Just like running, you have to put in the miles to really learn what you need to change to become a better runner. When you're succeeding, like when I'm running, I'm benefiting from running and I'm feeling better about it. Equally, when you design, you start seeing solutions work. There's this validation and this trial and error that I think develops craft. All that being said, I did a dumb little exercise and went through craft and made a acronym, C.R.A.F.T. I did a thing, and we'll finish with that, and that's the video.
Taking where you are. Turn around and face it, you're adjacent to the scars. I won't mind you though. We heard that story before.
So as we talk about craft, I tried to create a structure and a way to talk about the things that I think are most valuable and that contribute to what I would call craft as it relates to design, but specifically product design and UX and UI and designing software. This is super cheesy and I hate these things, but it's like almost a nod of the hat to like old school PowerPoint, giving a word for each letter of the thing. So I did this in a plane on my way up to Seattle, which kind of sparked this whole video. And so I'm coming back to these notes now, and honestly, am surprised that I think these things are meaningful. It was somewhat shot from the hip, if you will. Talking about craft, I think there's 5 things that are important to talk about, and I think that contribute to this overall value of what people often talk about when they say craft. Starting with craft, I think care is super important. So when I say care, you could also talk about like attention to detail, looking at polish, but I think this is broader than that. I think this is taking ownership over a product. I think it's making sure that you have quality and that you do pay attention to detail. Often as a product designer, it's easy to get the job done, but kind of slip on some of the details or to rely on someone else for the ownership. And I think someone that practices craft is really driving the progress and pushing for the detail and the quality. This is something that I constantly try to do and have a hard time doing. It requires a lot of time and attention. But I think when I talk about craft, care and making sure the thing is good, whatever that means, is really important. Second thing, rationale. I think a lot of craft is making decisions and having good reason to make those decisions. And so when I talk about rationale, this is a evaluation of options in making not just decisions and making calls, but informed decisions and calls, whether that's from research or from personal behavior or from observation. I think having a good rationale and a narrative of why you're making decisions behind the design is a big part of craft. We can all make good things, but why we're making them is a harder question. So I think rationale is huge. Agility. I think as I think about agility, this is very important for me within the context of Google. The only constant at Google is change. And I think this is the same for like a startup or someone that's a freelancer. There's always a new challenge, always things that are changing. Being able to be flexible and to evolve or change your direction or pivot your business model is essential in craft. I would say newer designers that don't or have a less evolved craft would react more emotionally or difficult or wouldn't be able to abandon their ideas in the context of design. And I think someone that practices craft is flexible and able to empathize and change and evolve with the project and with the context or with the startup. So agility and being able to move fast even in the context of that change, I think is really important. Also, I've got these, I talked about this maybe, I don't think it got in a video, but I've got these like blue lens filter glasses that I just bought. I look like a robot. Okay, back to craft. We did care, rationale, agility, facilitation. I think a lot of part of craft is being able to facilitate a conversation around design, whether that's with an entrepreneur or a CEO, whether that's with a project manager and an engineering lead. I think there's a big part of design that is including people in that process and making decisions with people, not just making decisions as designers and telling everyone else what they should do. A lot of craft is how you approach the people you work with. And so leading and guiding a team, whether that's through a sprint or even just being inclusive to those that might not be speaking out loud or being empathetic to the user or to other needs that aren't being voiced in a product meeting. Facilitation and being able to participate and potentially lead in the design conversation is a big part of craft. And I think something that's overlooked. And I don't think facilitation is like exclusive to leadership. I think whether you're a junior or mid-level individual contributor, like an IC, I think in meetings, facilitation looks like you getting up, grabbing the marker and going to the whiteboard and starting to like facilitate a conversation around the problems that are being discussed. And so I think facilitation is grossly underrated, but a big part of craft. Lastly, and I think this is something that was talked a lot about in the Twitter thread, but I would say like the last part of craft is just time. A lot of these things and a lot of these practices you just learn through practice. It's very hard to recommend a book or a podcast or a Medium article that teaches this nuance of craft. It really becomes, it's really learned through like failure and that kind of evolution of hustle and the ongoing like showing up, doing the work and learning from your mistakes that really develops craft. That's how you understand care and rationale and being agile and facilitating a team is through like just over and over time. And I think that's the one thing that can't be cheated. I think a lot of these other things you can learn, you can read about, time in the craft and doing the work is something that just can't be faked. And I think it's pretty obvious once you've spent time in the craft, when you look at other people's portfolios or you even talk or jam with someone on a design sprint or work and whiteboard or whatever, it becomes pretty apparent how long someone has been designing based on the questions they ask or the reactions they have. And so I think that's the hard answer is that, yes, you can do all these other things, but really a lot of it is just time and patience. But thanks for watching. Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Reach out if you have questions. I'm excited to engage and keep making videos. Thanks for watching. And sorry this one was kind of chatty. Hopefully I have less than me just in the camera talking in the future. But yeah, see you in the next one.
But they're dependent, so you just keep giving pause. I must defend it, oh, the tariffs hit you hard. Just keep it